I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Well, hello, friends. Hello, family. How are you today? This is the day the Lord has made, and we're rejoicing and we're glad in it. We're so glad to be here today. So glad to have some great friends here today. I'm incredibly excited about this conversation that we're going to have tonight. This is a King Day conversation, and we're extremely excited about it. I'm excited to have my 2 brothers with me, Mr. Matthew Grady, who is I'm going to call him a community engineer for young people in our community. He's a social and political strategist. He's a minister and an activist. Matthew Grady, so glad to have you here. Our executive pastor here at First Tabernacle, and also a tremendous community advocate, an advocate for young people in our community, our state representative at House 163, and as of today, candidate for state Senate. That's right, candidate for state Senate, Representative Derek Mallow. We thank God for you brothers being here. We're excited, we're grateful, and glad to have you here with us. Why don't y'all tell us good evening in your own way? Brother Grady?
Good evening, everybody. I'm really excited about this conversation. I'm honored to be here today. If you're just tuning in, do us a favor, share the video right now. I do believe that there is frugal and fruitful conversation that is going to be produced in this moment that we're going to share. So if you guys would just share really quickly, I'm just really excited to have this conversation. Thank you, Pastor, for having me. And I'm looking forward to the things that's going to manifest through this.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Mr. Representative, Mr. Soon-to-be Senator.
Man, thank you so much, Pastor Andre Osborne, my friend and my brother, for the invitation to stand here to discuss the legacy of Dr. King and that King conversation. To my friend, Mr. Matt Grady, always a pleasure to be here with you, and to everybody on social media, Facebook. Listen, y'all make sure y'all share this and y'all comment, tag some folks, and talk back to us so we can have a healthy, fruitful conversation tonight. I am Representative Derek Mallow, serving Georgia's 163rd House District, and I'm excited to be here on tonight. And yes, I have officially launched my bid to become the next senator from the 2nd Senatorial District here in the great city of Savannah in Chatham County. So much love for everybody who stood with me in the cold this morning. Appreciate it.
Well, absolutely. And I want you to do as those brothers have asked. Please do press share, like the post, press share. And if you have some comments, I want you to make sure that you leave the comments there. If you have a question or something that you want to add to the conversation, make sure you add it in the comment section. And be joining us in a moment, our good friend and brother, the Reverend Dr. Francys Johnson, who is a pastor and theologian. He's a great thinker. He's a social and civic activist. He's an attorney and a civil rights activist. He's the former president of the Georgia NAACP, and he is also the current president of the New Georgia Project, one of the foremost organizations that helped to turn Georgia blue. They were working in a very, very very close contact way to make sure the message of the vote was communicated. The need and the necessity to vote was communicated to every single constituent, every citizen of the state. And what an important message that is in this moment. So I want you to make sure you share. And again, if you have a comment, I want you to leave it there. Now, let me just say this. Let me explain why tonight's conversation is important. It's important for us to have a conversation like we're having tonight because I believe that the church is not only positioned to get people to heaven, but I believe that the kingdom of God is breaking into the affairs of the earth. And wherever there is injustice, wherever there is suffering, wherever there are problems, I believe that the gospel has implications for how we live and what is going on in the world in which we live. And that's why it's important for us to have a conversation about the current status of the movement created by Dr. King. And isn't it amazing that today we celebrate a man that was largely detested in his day? I believe that great leaders are largely misunderstood in their day and time. But I want us to take a moment and reflect on his legacy, reflect on that which he has done. I didn't want the day to pass without our community, even though we didn't have a parade today. We've had so many other things that have transpired in a wonderful way over the weekend. But I wanted us to have a community conversation and a call to action tonight. So again, hit share and please leave your questions or your comments in the comment section, and we'd love to highlight them and discuss them. Again, Dr. Francys Johnson will be joining us here shortly. So while I have you here, Representative Mallow, I want to make sure we have a conversation that is not just at the legislative or judicial level, but I want to make sure we have a conversation that includes what people can do in their everyday lives to, as we're terming it tonight, make his dream a reality in and for our community. So when you think about the dream that Dr. King envisioned, what is the current status of that dream in our community?
I think, to be totally honest and transparent with you, Reverend Osborne, for some, that dream is on delay. That dream has not yet manifested for many. Yes, we have moved to a place where we have integrated schools, but when we look at equity all across America in the fabric, not only of moral and social justice, but with housing, even with issues in labor, we know that Dr. King would travel to Memphis and stand with the sanitation workers who were on protest in Memphis due to unsafe conditions. They were not being compensated accurately. There were many issues, and those issues we still see today. And there have been issues that for some have not been arrested yet. And so from 1960 until now, the people who still are looking for their dream, it has not quite shown up for them. And that is because of how things have been woven in our community and what has happened and taken place. And honestly, I hope that we can get to a point where they can realize the potential of that dream that Dr. King had.
I think that's powerful. I think it's certainly on point. Matt, in the same vein, and because you stand in a generation right behind, I would say, me and Representative Mallow's generation. The generations before ours were the generations that were walking along with the dreamer. Our generation have, in large part, benefited from some of those dreams becoming a reality. But tell me, in your generation, how do you perceive what has happened to Dr. King's dream?
Great question, Pastor. I think if we're going to make King's dream a reality, we first have to be honest about the state of this country's reality, right? Oftentimes, I think we are disengaged as young people, particularly we're not invested and or involved in the struggle for the things that matter to Dr. King, because as long as the people before us refrain from giving us fruitful information about what actually took place, history has a way of repeating itself when people don't understand and or know the effects of how that history has played a part on our current reality. If we're going to make steps forward, progressive steps forward, we've got to be honest about our reality. But number two, we have to be honest about our priorities. Right? We've got to, even though we may be on the same sides of the aisle, different sides of the aisle, I think our generation is not afraid to disagree, but we can't take our generation's disagreement as disrespect. Right. So when we say that we stand with this person, but we agree and disagree to this is not a matter of disrespect and or we don't see what people have done before us. We're just acknowledging the fact that voting still matters, that democracy still matters, that protesting still matters, that student loans still matters, that infrastructure matters. It can all matter at the same time. But for this generation, we've got to talk fast and we've got to talk quickly and we've got to say what we mean and mean what we say and do what we say we're going to do. So I think it's a matter of accountability. I'm talking like I'm getting ready to run for office, huh? Keep going.
I want to ask you, gentlemen, because I know there is some trepidation about the younger generation's involvement in the movement, involvement in transforming institutions, involvement in connecting with some of our historic societal institutions like the vote and other things in government. But there's so much distrust that we've kind of disengaged. Some of our generation have kind of disengaged. What do you think it's going to take to get our generations, the younger generations, re-engaged in reframing and reshaping these institutions so that they become institutions that will work to the profit of people of color?
I think you have to restore trust back in the system. In order for people to believe that it can cause change, they have to see change take place. And one of the other things I think is we need to make sure that in all that we do, we're unified and we're not pulling each other apart, because when we tear each other apart, it causes an even bigger distrust of the system because it seems that no one-two group of people can work together. And we know that they say united we stand. United we stand together. And so if we're not united and standing together and people pulling out the fabric of what we're trying to accomplish, where you see in the Congress, you got, as President Joe Biden said, you got 51 presidents now. Everybody want to be the president because each one person can hold out their vote that can move an agenda forward. But what we have to do is stay unified on the cause and not listen so much to the rhetoric that's out there, but also making our people aware and engaged of what's happening in this discourse and in this conversation. Because if we don't and we lose a generation, then guess what? The cause is lost because we won't get anything. And then our people will become discouraged and say, man, that don't matter for me. There's no hope for me. What real change can I see happen when I'm still struggling with the same issues? Help me understand that. And so I think by keeping folks engaged in the conversation to show them what we've been able to accomplish. But I think sometimes when you try to bend the moral arc of the universe, it's a pretty big bend. Dr. King said it leans towards justice, but for some people to see it bend, it takes a little time to bend it.
Same question, Dr. Grady.
I think to answer that question, I think we need to realize that what happens to any of us better be the business of all of us, right? Today is a tomorrow you're worried about yesterday, and young people are worried about our tomorrow. And if we're going to do that, we have to realize that democracy is not a spectator sport, right? We've got to get involved. We've got to play our part. So to be more specific about moving that arch forward, as Derek spoke about, we've got to get engaged. We've got to be informed, but I think we also have to take action, right? So we've got to stop arguing about incarceration and start talking about education. We got to focus on the movement of jobs, not the movement of jails. We got to actually talk about issues that are affecting our people today. The poverty gap in America is still a problem. Voting is still a problem. King talked about voting in May 1957. Here we are in 2022. We're still begging to vote, right? These are issues that young people, and if young people are going to be continuously in these conversations, you've got to find them in it. You've got to make it relevant towards them. And that is so, I know Representative Mallow and I work closely together, and we talk about incarceration and the issues with incarceration, and it affects young people. A young person gets a felony on their record. When is the next time they're going to find a job that's worth going home and being proud of that paycheck, right? A single mother who lives on Medicaid, who lives on welfare, how is she going to make it? So these are issues that I think that Dr. King argued and or put towards the forefront of us. And if we're going to move forward, let's talk about them. But as Joe Biden often says, we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
I just want to add to the conversation. You talk about those young people, right, and what they need to see in policies. So if a young person gets convicted of a felony right now and they try to go do anything in aviation, go be a concessions owner, own a Wendy's franchise in the airport, they have to have a background clear for the last 10 years for them to even be granted access to run anything in the airport concessions. So when you talk about the aviation industry is booming, it's booming for some people, but not for everybody. And so it's a travesty to say that you can pay a debt to society, but still come out and still have a debt. And so we talk about this restorative justice, even in the church, and how Christ grants us this reconciliation. He paid the penalty for us. And so our sins are forgiven. But in America, if you commit a crime and you have a felony, that is a social sin that is not easily forgotten. It is actually a stain that is hard to wash away off of a person's record because the stain still shows up. Even though 20 years have lapsed, the stain is still there. And that's one of those travesties that will keep people away from opportunities for prosperity. And we have to start looking at policies and engaging in this conversation to make some real change, not just some type of rhetoric, but some real change. So advocating at the federal and congressional level to make that 5 years. If somebody gets a felony, we ain't got to wait 10 years. If they're trying to turn their life around and make a better living, oftentimes crimes of recidivism come because people just don't have opportunities for economic growth.
Wow, you guys have thrown a lot at us. And let me just say once again, guys, whether at home or wherever you are, I want you to make sure that you're interacting with us, because we're going to answer questions as they're posed in the comments. We want to hear from you. So make sure you dialogue with us. Make sure you engage with us. We want an engaged audience tonight. So say hello to us. So glad to see everyone that has said hello already. Reverend Hart, Sister Frazier, Pastor Paul Smith, Minister Kenneth Jenkins. Listen, so talk to us, because I want to make sure that we get your questions, your concerns in front of this panel, and hopefully we can come out with some action steps that are going to help us, some strategies that are going to help us make King's dream a reality for our community, something that's going to help somebody in their everyday life here in the community in which we live. So make sure you comment and dialogue with us. I want to ask this. I want to ask this. In your mind, or from your perspective, what do you feel are the 3 the big three issues impacting communities of color?
Is that a question for me or Derek?
I'm gonna give you both a chance to slice at it. So
Okay, I'll go first then. I think three things that are impacting people of color right now is the poverty gap. Poverty in America is at an all-time high, right? That's been ongoing forever and ever. We can talk about America and democracy and all these things, but the real question, number one, is America working for Black and brown people? So when we talk about poverty, I'm a programs man. I just believe in programs. I believe in policy, but I also believe in programs. That we can't afford to take programs out of communities. We've got to put programs back into communities. A Representative Mallow said something so good earlier, that where our budget is actually where our heart is and our passion is. So rather to pose it, it's just simple. What Georgia and what every state in this country prioritize and fight financially determines what they're actually producing as a cost for. So poverty in America is a big issue. So we've got to put programs back in the community that are teaching young people trades, giving them jobs, right? So even if they aren't planning on going to a 4-year college, you've got to give them the resources to be able to get up a trade so they can be able to make some money and provide for their families. Where people can't make some money, they commit crime. Where they commit crime, we have a crisis. So if we're going to do well in this country, we've got to put programs back in there. The church has to stand up. Community activists have to stand up. If your church can close down in the community, not miss it, what was the point of it being open from the very beginning? So poverty in America is an ongoing issue in the Black and brown community. But secondly, I think in America, those of us, all of us on this call, right, we understand the struggle of student loan debt. We are drowning in student loan debt. Right now, my student loan debt is $47,000. Some people don't make $47,000 in a year. So how are you supposed to pay back $47,000? So, we can't afford to take things out of the bill when we vote for somebody to keep it in the bill. Student loan crisis in this country is a problem, and we've got to get a hold on it, and we've got to get resources to help young people if you want them to stick around and really believe that a 4-year university is worth it. Because there's some people with $47,000 and more in student loan debt, but they only get a job for $65,000. So how are you supposed to get married, lead your family, making a $65,000 a year annual income, on top of that paying back $47,000, and that goes to your debt ratio to paying and getting a house and getting approved by a lender? This ain't even debt. You're not even in the repayment status at that point. So how student loan debt, right? So number one, I think we got to get programs. Number two, I think we've got to focus on student loan debt in America. But number three, I think that are affecting Black and brown communities in this country is crime. If we don't do something about crime, crime's going to do something about us. Crime is a non-pressing issue in this country, and I think we've got to talk about gun control. We're not kissing the coattail of lobbyists. We're not kissing the coattail of the NRA. The NRA does not run our parks. They don't run our schools. They don't run our programs. It is not okay for people to shoot assault weapons in public parks. It's not okay for people to, I don't personally believe, it's not about your moral rights or your civic rights about gun control. I just don't think that we need many arsenals in our homes where that produces gun control. So we got to talk about ghost guns, right? And we also have to talk about guns in our communities that are being shallow, and guns in our community that's being poured back in our community. So yeah, all of those things. That's what I was saying. So that's what I got to say about that. So yeah, gun control, poverty in this country, and student loan debt.
Well, tag, I guess I'm in. So I have a different spin a little bit than Brother Grady, and I think that's why, Reverend Osborne, you have us all here to provide a different perspective. And the perspective that I'm looking at of the three things that I'm looking at is housing, education, and higher wage paying jobs. Now, I do agree with the student loan debt crisis, right? I think it's crazy that America will take a chance and loan me $100,000 to go get 2 sheets of paper. I think it's crazy. I think it's crazy. They'll gamble on me and send me to school and let me keep going back and take these loans out to get another sheet of paper. Now, I'm going to tell you, I had a good quality education from Savannah State University in my Master Public Administration program. It was real good. But I think it's crazy that only in America can a young person go and take out $100,000 in student loan, but couldn't go get a business loan. Think about that. So they wouldn't invest in my idea for entrepreneurship, that if I had $100,000, I promise y'all, I used to want to own a grass cutting business. I like cutting grass. I think I'm a pretty good landscaper right by my house. You'll see the line edged up. It's nice. I can't do the bushes as good, but I mean, I get some friends to come help me with that. But let's think about it: $100,000, and I couldn't even get any money to be approved for a business because I needed some type of collateral, some type of way to pay the loan back. I went to college. I signed up. Guess what? Cashed in the student loan, signed the repayment process, and guess what? And they know I wasn't finna send all that money back because I knew I wasn't finna send all that money back. So I don't know who's crazy, them or me. Maybe both of us at this point. But the craziest investment is that they wouldn't invest in my idea for entrepreneurship. Now, I could have went to college. That business degree definitely would have helped me. But guess what would have helped me even better? If I had the ability and access to capital to help start this idea for a landscaping business, but I'm not a landscaper. That dream died a long time ago. I got my check knee light on now. So now what I look at with policy is, how do I make this better for the next generation, moving them from a place of working to live and making them where they are not living to work either, but where they're enjoying their life, right? So they don't have to work to live and they don't have to live to work, but they can have a happy medium in between. Next deal that I look at is those higher wage paying jobs, that entrepreneurship, giving people that access and that gateway, because education is a gateway. But man, education can't be a gateway when you're in a heck of a lot of debt. And then guess what? I got nervous when they sent me that student loan repayment and said, you coming out of deferment from COVID relief. This is going to be the payment. I say, shoot, I don't know what y'all finna do, but I'm about to email somebody and tell them I don't have $637 for you. You got to find somebody else. I don't have it. I don't know where you're going to get it from. It's just not here. And the last piece is housing. And even in just Chatham County, we have a 40% owner occupancy rate because more people do not own their homes. We're moving in the space of renting. And it's hard to do measures when it comes to rent control because you're jumping into a capitalistic environment. Now, government has some roles and some responsibilities that it can do to get us there, but we really have to focus on getting everybody ready to move to a pathway of helping them from renting to ownership and really changing the ideology of renting is okay. I'm not bashing anybody who rents their house because I rented too. I rented my apartment, but I had to say, how do I create some long-standing wealth? Because one thing my grandmama told me, she said, God ain't making no more dirt, son. He's made all the dirt he gonna make. So he got to get you a piece of it. And I said, well, grandmama, I might not need a piece of dirt. She said, even when you get ready to leave this world, you're gonna have to have a piece of dirt somewhere. So get a couple pieces so that you have a place to go when you leave here and you have something to leave behind. And I think that's one of the other things affecting our community is when you look at generational wealth, the way real estate is going, I tell everybody all the time, the way my grandmother's house and the house 2 blocks across the street, because of redlining, man, her house is worth $150,000 according to the appraisal, but just 2 blocks over, because it wasn't redlined, that house is worth $450,000. So if both of us had grandparents who sold those houses, they will automatically have a leg up over me because based off of government policies, they weren't redlined. So that house is worth $450 and mine is only worth $150. You see where I'm going with that? So access to generational wealth is something that we have to look at. And I think it's through real estate and home ownership to get us in a place where we finally own something.
Man, that's pointed and powerful. I need to pause for a moment because one of my favorite people on the planet, and he might not know this.
Oh, wow.
He might know it, he might not, but one of my favorite people on the planet, and certainly one of my favorite people to listen to. I can listen to this gentleman postulate all day long. I just want you to know, Dr. Johnson, we love you. We appreciate you. I thank you for taking the time to be here tonight because I know you have you're working on an extremely important case up there in Statesboro, and it hasn't received, I think it's due, but we support you. We're praying for you, and we honor the work that you do day in and day out. We're just glad to have you here tonight.
Grateful to be on. Thank you for having me. We were rushing from another event, and we're just glad to spend some time with you all on this Martin Luther King Day and lift up what's important. And of course, all that I've thought about today is the fact that here we are on Martin Luther King Day, and there's still no legislation to secure his life's work, which was the fight for the franchise. after the second Reconstruction, what many people call the Civil Rights Movement. And what was true then is true now. The filibuster was used then to hold up voting rights, and it's being used now. And my question to this administration, my question to the Republicans who stand in opposition to it, my question to every politician, every preacher, every businessman on this King holiday is, will you live up to the promise of this democracy? Because what we're witnessing is a diminution of that democracy. And so tomorrow we will watch a president who we elected in a pandemic upon the promise that he would restore the soul of this democracy. We will watch that president fail to secure the voting rights fail to secure the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, failed to secure even the compromise legislation that Joe Manchin argued for and claimed that he would get Republicans to support. We will watch this democratically controlled Congress, both a House and a Senate, fail to do their job. And they will give you all kind of hand-wringing. They will tell you about their agenda and their plans, but tomorrow you will see them fail. And I'm not here on this call tonight as a Democrat. I'm not here as a Republican. I'm here as a Black person in America who is watching, literally watching our voting rights fall before our very eyes. And so this is a singular call that I'm making tonight, that this is important. Pay attention. There's a reason why there's an asterisk beside so many of the people who operate within our spirit. They're the first since Reconstruction, because we had a tremendous set of voting rights which were chipped away, and by the turn of the century, our voting rights were nearly extinguished, and were practically all but extinguished but in certain places in this country. And this is the beginning of a trek back to that dark place. So, brother, thank you for convening this session and lifting up some important issues. None is more important than our voting rights. As the Supreme Court has said, the right to vote is cumulative and preservative of all other rights. It is the wellspring by which we have a voice to participate in this representative democracy. So that's my clarion call tonight. That's what I'm thinking about, focused on, and through the work of the New Georgia Project, trying to see if we can move these politicians to get off their ass and do what they promised. And that's just it.
I like this. I love this. Oh, yes.
Dr. Frank Johnson, my homiletic hero.
Doc, I have a question that I've been thinking about this. I have this question specifically for you. This is probably the most philosophical question I want to ask tonight, because I'm depending on you guys, not just to give us from the legislative level and the judicial level, kind of an overview of what needs to be done. But I'm hoping that we can come away tonight with some actionable steps for a family. What can they do? What can a family do in America to ensure they don't fall prey to these unjust systems and these pejorative institutions, that are moving against, people of color? So, but I want to ask something kind of in the clouds for a second. Doc, here's my question, and gentlemen, I'm gonna give you a shot at it too. Why is America. Now we're seeing the King observance days everywhere and all of this, but we have to remember this is the same king that wrote a letter from a Birmingham jail, the same king, that was largely, he was kind of a mixed figure in terms of his popularity in America at the time. He might have been a hated individual had he stayed alive. And so why is it, Doc, that America is more comfortable with a dead king than a living dreamer?
Mm. That is such a powerful, powerful statement. And I would lift up what Time magazine called Martin Luther King in the same month that he was killed in 1968, in April of 1968. Time magazine called Martin Luther King the most hated man in America. And regardless of revisionist history and people's short memories, people's thought that they would have welcomed King into their church, or they marched with King, and they supported the cause. The truth of the matter is, King would not have been welcomed in 95% of the churches in Savannah. King would not have been welcomed, uh, and so there's a poem written by Carl Wendell Hines that I love to lift up during this time when people are quoting the sanitized, whitewashed, and sterile king that they trot out every year. Now that he is safely dead, let us praise him. Let us build monuments to his glory and sing hosannas to his name, for dead men make such convenient heroes. For they cannot rise to challenge the images that we fashion from their lives. The first objection would be from King, if King was alive, about the way he is portrayed, about how his dream is talked about, and not the concrete plans for a real redistribution of the economic wealth of this country, a real look at the violence perpetrated in the name of God and in the name of patriotism, the real threat that poverty poses, these triple evils, he calls them. And Carl Wendell Hines wraps it up this way, as I wrap up and give space for my brothers to lean in. He says, and besides, it is easier to build monuments, to throw parades. It is easy for us to lift up his image now that he is safely dead, than to build a better world. So we have got to get up out of this holiday more convinced to make a better world. There are three things that have to happen if we're going to do that. First of all, we have got to tear down evil institutions. We've got to tear down evil institutions. My grandmother said it this way, even if it was ungrammatical, the profundity of it still sticks with me. Satan, we're going to tear your kingdom down. Hers was not spiritual rhetoric. She believed that their job, even without an education, they built colleges and universities. They believed their jobs, even without the wealth that we have, they built savings and loan institutions. They believed that it was their job to tear down evil systems that were preventing Black people from moving forward. So we've got to tear down evil institutions, and you can't be afraid to call that which is evil, evil. The second thing we've got to do is we've got to move marginalized people to the center of the conversation. I'm sitting here in my office in Savannah, and this is a city where Black people are elected to every position and have absolutely no power to do anything for Black people. And so we've got to move and not be afraid to move like every other group does, move our issues and our priorities to the center of the conversation. And the third thing we've got to do is we've got to shift institutional power. It makes no sense to have Black mayors, Black attorney generals, Black governors, and even a Black president if we don't shift institutional power. And so those are the three things that we have got to be focused on. Every one of our organizations, if any one of our organizations had the answer, we wouldn't be in the problem that we are in. That's what the church has to do. The church, the mosque, the temple, the synagogue has to do, because if any church had the right answer, then we wouldn't be in the mess that and don't tell me to pray, because there's no people on the face of the earth who have prayed more than Black people. If prayer alone could save us, we would already have been saved. No one is coming to save us. We've got to save ourselves.
Can y'all can see now why I love to listen to him. Come on, brethren, chime in. Dr. Grady.
I don't think I really have much to say after that presentation, but I will attempt to articulate some level of thoughts from a 25-year-old in America. I think to just not even just illuminate a substance of what he shared. I just think from our standpoint as young people, we don't know what to do with a king in America today, because Black people have become too comfortable with white people. And I think if we're going to entertain spaces of equality, we have to be able to call out spaces of injustice. And my fear for the church today is that we will sensitize Jesus as a savior and demolish King as a patriot. And but at some point, any leader and or hero has to be willing to tear down and flip over a table. And so when I think about as King popularity began to dwindle years prior before his death, because America likes any hero they can control, that's how come the FBI won't leave him alone. So when I think about a king in today's generation, if we're going to have those kind of leaders and if we're going to engage those kind of things, we've got to be honest about where we're not. We still haven't championed voting in this country. Poverty is still bad. White people still run major offices in this country, and we still have a bunch of house Negroes that think all of our skin folk is our kin folks. But if we're going to make progressive steps forward in this process, we've got to acknowledge what Dr. King did, what Dr. King said, and we've got to do what Dr. King did as well. And that's going to require a seat at the table. As Dr. Johnson so proficiently said, is that there's a lot of people that look like us that are now possessing offices, but they don't control them. They don't run them, because as we always known in this country, that money continues to control the seat. There is no way in this country, in King's America, the guy that we quoted so much today, that we've got a House and a Senate ran by Democrats, but we won't be able to pass voting legislation tomorrow in this same country that quoted King on the 17th and is going to deny Black people their right to vote on the 18th. Democracy is not a spectator sport. If democracy is going to work for all of us, it has to include all of us. And we can't afford to take stuff out that benefits other people. So if you want to make steps forward, can't be afraid to be uncomfortable.
Wow. Mr. Rep?
Well, I think Dr. Francis Johnson stated it so eloquently, along with Brother Grady. When we look at Dr. King, I believe it was in 1968 at Michigan High School, when they asked him to condemn the riots, he said, I can't condemn the riots. I can't condemn the acts of the rioters, because we have to address the issues as to why they are rioting. And I think earlier this summer, we had people asking for people to condemn the criminal aspect of the rioting that took place as we saw George Floyd killed, but we didn't want to speak to the issues with policing and what policing in African-American communities looks like. We still don't have Justice in George Floyd and Policing Act that has been passed, along with voting rights. I think those issues are where people are looking in the conversation and the discourse to say, we want to see effective change and policy happen. Don't tell us that we should be quiet about this, but you're not actually answering the call of why we're agitating and making this an issue. But then at the same time, a juxtaposition is on January 6th, we had an insurrection in America's government where we saw people who were under the guise of patriotism and liberty try to establish a coup and overthrow the U.S. government. And then when it's time for people to call out the bad actors, they say, but they were patriots. Patriots how? The Patriots were in Ferguson. The Patriots were in South Carolina. The Patriots were the folks that were organizing in Brunswick to make sure that those folks were brought to justice. Those were the Patriots. But when you look at the totality of America, we said, but those guys went up there to fight for democracy and they went to fight for justice. No, they didn't. They're domestic terrorists. And until America can face the radical truth to call people out where they are and not make it comfortable for them to exist, then we're going to continue to be in this place. And so when we look at what took place in Missouri and Indianapolis, and you see all of these things that happen, folks still want to see the Justice and Policing Act, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed, because when we look at it, we saw all of these people literally commit an insurrection at the United States Capitol. The military is not far away. And when the sound and the alarm went, it took them almost 30 minutes to get there. I don't know what kind of 911 call they had, but if it was any other place or any other community, they would have showed up with SWAT gear and anybody would have been shot on sight. And I think for most people, when they sit on the backside and look at that, they see the treatment of people of color in their community when it comes to this type of engagement. When it's other folks, they don't see the same type of engagement. If I could just take it like my daughter would tell me, keep that same energy. That's what we want to see in our community. We want you to keep that same energy. The same way you police us heavy-handed, police those insurrectionists heavy-handed. Don't hand out 6-month sentences. I know people that have stolen food from Family Dollar and have got 10-year sentences for just shoplifting over a certain dollar amount. In the legislature this past year, the Georgia General Assembly made it a felony if you steal 3 or more Amazon packages, regardless of value. That's crazy. But if I try to overthrow the United States government, I got a 6-month prison sentence. Come on, man, we got to do better. And sentencing has to be fair. Everything around this whole conversation of what Dr. King would have been asking for, in my opinion, would have been for what the folks who have been unheard are asking for. And that's where I think he would have rested at on that side.
Pastor Osborne has invited a second part in his inquiry that deserves some time. He says, what should a family do? What should we do beyond articulating, and it deserves to be articulated, the frustration of this moment that we find ourselves? What does our theology lead us to do in terms of the praxis? That's the question to the church. What does our jurisprudence lead the lawyer to do in terms of our practice? What does the medical evidence suggest that doctors and healthcare professionals should do with the gross health inequities? And King said of all the injustices around healthcare are the most inhumane. What is that going to lead us to do differently? This is a time to act. And honestly, if we fail to act in this moment, our children and their children's children will have some very difficult questions to ask us about how we squandered so great a legacy and how we pissed away our inheritance, which was the moral authority of people who made ways out of no ways, who sanctified a disgraced religion and found God in the dark. When they made expressions over my head, they could not see God anywhere in their lived reality. I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere. And we are wringing our hands with more PhDs, JDs, D-Mens, more people with paper degrees and less action plans, more organizations and people starting them every day and less action than we've ever had before. More millionaires and billionaires and less action than we've ever seen before. This is a time for action. And so my statement to each of us is, in our sphere of influence, what are we willing to do? Not talk, but what are we willing to do? As a lawyer, my professional job, what am I willing to do to press the cause of justice? And for me, that has meant sometimes standing up for my client puts me on the ire of some judge, or it puts me on the outs with somebody who thinks that I shouldn't say this, or it may mean I spend some time in jail. But damn it, that is a poor sacrifice compared to the people who came before me. And so I want the record to be clear that I have tried to do what I could with what I have where I am. And if you're listening to this broadcast, whether you pick up paper for a living or trash for a living, teach kids, help to take care of our elderly in nursing homes, whether you are a professional who manages a bank or whatever you're doing, you need to lend your influence to more than just pampering your ass. I mean, how many Mercedes, how many Lexuses can you have? I mean, what good is to live in a split level home in a gated community when you can't even send your children out hopeful that they will come back home unmolested by the police, or if not in a body bag? What good is it that we are where we are and we are still in many ways relegated to second-class citizenship? So I'm for action. I'm for pastors. What are your action plans? If not, we should not expect people to come back to our churches, come back to our synagogues, our mosques, our temples. What is your action plan? Because if you don't have one, then you are co-signing the slavery of our people. And I mean to speak in these stark terms because I deeply believe we're in a moment that is about 1876 all over again, where federal intervention is being pulled away. The federal government is basically saying, we can't help you. What if Georgia wants to take away your rights? If Georgia wants to roll back the clock on, we can't help you. President can't help you. The Congress can't help you. The Supreme Court can't help you. The only thing left is war. And whether you know it or not, there are many people who believe January 6th was not a mere riot, that it was the first battle in what they intend to be a reclaiming of what they think is the soul of this country. We cannot allow it. We cannot allow it.
I'm stunned. I don't think there's a better way to put it. Can you, if you hear that, can you just type in the comments, we about that life, action, action, action. We got to get up and do something. And that is my hope, and in part, it's my frustration, because everywhere we turn, Doc, like you say, if you are a pastor in this environment and you are sincerely trying to help people, and then at every impasse, you are met with, oh, we've done all we can do. Oh, this is all we can do. Oh, this is, that seems to be, it's just not good enough. It's not good enough for everybody's hands to be tied. And particularly because, we're beholden to someone else. And whoever we are beholden to benefits from the pejorative and dire plight that some of us are put in.
But we don't have to resign ourselves to that frustration and to feel like we are powerless. So, and this is not merely black or white, the justice issues that we are talking about. This is what we have to do. We have to first start with ourselves. So as a man, I have to realize that I have such extraordinary privilege. Where am I making space for women in the profession? And we in our firm just named our first female partner. We're on our way to being the largest black firm in this state. We intend to be the largest black firm in this state. We have offices in three locations. We'll have another location before the end of this year, and we intend to do that. If you are straight, what space are you creating? How are you making it more fair? How are you affirming the value and the worth and life of same gender loving people? And don't come giving me your stale, tired, lazy reading of scripture, trying to hide behind theological smokescreen, no less than the slaveholder did when he held your ancestors in slavery and raped your grandmothers and beat your grandfathers. So don't give me that. To those who are able, how are we making space for those who are otherwise able? And every spirit of power that we have, are we sharing it? Because we can't demand the white folks do something we aren't doing ourselves. And right now, we've got returning citizens coming back from the decolonization of our prison industrial complex. They're coming back to communities that have been devastated by their absence. And what space are we creating for them? And how are we making ways for them? And so let us not suggest that everything that we need to happen has to come from the White House. Some of it needs to start in your own house. That all of it needs to come from legislation. Some of it needs to come through some motivation to do some different things in your own sphere of influence. And so from whether you went to Morehouse, whether you're still using an outhouse, we've got to get our own house in order, because we're losing the moral authority to speak about these injustices while we tolerate them going on within our own communities. And so let us not give way to the sense that we are powerless. With our hands, I come from a people who use their hands and built a better future. The least I can do is to secure it for the next generation.
My goodness. One of the things legislatively, and I've seen this question asked, one of the things legislatively, and perhaps that we need to advocate for in this moment, we still have so many Georgians who are without health care, and they would benefit from the expansion of Medicaid. Mr. Representative, can you tell me the status of that, and what do we need to do in order as a community to take action and move people, move those who claim to represent us in the direction of action?
Well, we need to move to Leader Abrams. Stacey Abrams is our governor. Our current governor has refused to expand Medicaid. The Biden administration struck down his right to work waiver, in that the state touts of a surplus. Just last year, the minority leader, Dr. James Beverly, made 2 consecutive motions on the floor of the House of Representatives to include Medicaid expansion in the budget. And we voted those measures and lost both times because we do not have the majority in the Georgia General Assembly, in the House or the Senate. And so when the fight comes to Medicaid, we're actively fighting the fight, but in our state house, we don't have the numbers. And one of the things that I've learned about the General Assembly is they have power in how they govern. And they govern with a strict iron rule of fists in the Georgia General Assembly on what bills they'll pass and what bills they won't pass, and what seems too democratic and what may not be too democratic, and what they allow to pass and what they allow not to move. And I think we have to start by changing out that leadership, because I know we want to expand Medicaid in the House Democratic Caucus. I know we want to expand Medicaid. We want to do quite a few more other things. But I think because the people who are making decisions have never been on Medicaid, they've never used Medicaid, they've never experienced Medicaid. So they're legislating from a point of privilege and not from a point of poverty. When you had to use Medicaid, or you had your children on Medicaid, you know somebody on Medicaid, you know somebody who needed Medicaid and couldn't get Medicaid, the conversation changes when it's personal. And just like anything that you see across the aisle, or anything you see in the General Assembly or the congressional legislature, nothing moves until it affects them personally. And that is the God's honest truth. Any legislative cause that I've looked at, things have changed because it has affected somebody personally. Any law that you've seen pass, it is because it affected somebody personally. If it wasn't for Ahmaud Arbery, we wouldn't have repealed citizens' arrest. It would have still been the law of the state of Georgia. But because he organized and galvanized this thing, it was a serious conversation to be had about it. And it still wasn't everything, but it was a start. But when you look at it, if it wasn't for that, that conversation wouldn't have happened. It was because so many people got together and cried out and said, we got to have this. And I really think that we got to make the folks that walk across the hall into the Gold Dome in Atlanta uncomfortable and let them know we're asking for this. We're demanding that you do this. And until we do that, I don't think it'll change, because they don't think that our demands are serious.
I know one of the ways we put demand on those who represent us is the ballot box, but what are some other ways that we can put a demand on those who represent us? Tell us what we need to do.
You may think it's old school and cliche, but I think folks who write letters and flooding them in the mailbox, I think when we show up, I think when we advocate, I think when we make it known, I think when we leverage our leaders like Dr. Johnson to be a spokesperson for us, but also when our leaders organize us and tell us where we need to go and what we need to do. It's hard when you're sitting in the General Assembly to say, I need you to do this, this, and this, because you're having to watch so much happening fast. But what I think for the people who are on the ground, the pastors and the churches, I haven't seen a busload of folk come up to Atlanta yet to talk about Medicaid expansion. We need everybody to come and say, we want Medicaid expansion and we want it now. But until we see those people, those voters, those constituents, and we show up, we won't see it. It's just like when Moses was taking the children of Israel out of Egypt. They thought that they were getting ready to die because Pharaoh had chariots on their heels. Until we put our chariots on the heels of these folks in government, they're going to think they're comfortable and it's okay. So we really have to get organized with our churches, coming back, leading folks back to the Capitol, presenting what that agenda looks like from the church and saying, these are the things that we're asking for. The church hadn't sent a list of things that they're asking for. I haven't seen a legislative agenda from the church. I haven't seen the church host a meeting saying, this is what we're asking for. We've been very silent in that approach, but I think the time is now for us to be very vocal in that approach, not just when it's time for voting rights or we're talking about it when the bill comes up for a vote, but we need to be active in the discourse and the dialogue taking place. Just like the Georgia Chamber's holding their legislative breakfast, the Black church should hold its legislative breakfast and tell you the things that we're asking for in the Black community. We don't need anybody else to ask for us. We need to ask for ourselves.
I just want you to know I'm taking notes. So when you see the Black church legislative breakfast come up, you'll know where it came from.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. It needs to happen. Frederick Douglass said it best, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. And so we have to put a demand on the table. Additionally, support organizations. There's some that are out doing the good work. I can think of several. Fair Fight is a great organization, which is fighting directly on the issue of voting rights. The organization that I chair the board of, the New Georgia Project, which was founded by Stacey Abrams and chaired by Raphael Warnock before he stepped down and run for Senate, is doing that. And we are doing that across a wide range of agenda items, including the green agenda, including the future in terms of finance, in terms of youth development. We've got a whole platform. You should visit the New Georgia Project and all of our affiliates. We have an action fund. We have a PAC where we're endorsing candidates, and not just a paper endorsement. We're not waiting on anybody to save us. We're a Black power building organization, and we intend to. We're not ashamed to say we're trying to build power for Black people, and so join an organization. The third thing you can do is, and I say this because people are told that they're powerless. But let me tell you something. You are powerful yourself. Turn off that damn TV. Open up and begin the process of educating yourself. If I told you that there were buildings that had treasures of books, and all you had to do is apply for a free card, and they'd let you take as many out as possible, and you'd say, what kind of place is that? I'd call it a library. Get in there and stop watching cats sing on Facebook and fights in the street, and get into the library and take responsibility to educate yourself about what's going on, and your children about what's going on, about their history, and about their legacy, and about the future that they can build, and stop telling them they've got to have this or that to do it. Bethune-Cookman was started with a few dusty books and a few dollars that Mary McLeod Bethune had. And I could go on and on and on. We already have the blueprint. You don't have to imagine this. We've done it before. It's time to do it again. To be the people, the God's people, who make ways out of no ways.
Absolutely. Dr. Johnson, let me ask you a real quick question. when talking about the organizations that you named earlier, you don't have to disclose dollars, but how much support do you get financially from Black churches for that work?
Very little. Black churches are too busy being museums. Too busy, being museums really, or living graveyards where and so or places for the promotion of the celebrity of their leadership. And it's a crying shame. Now there is a great trend, so I think we have sufficiently defeated theologically the notion of prosperity gospel as a viable interpretation of scripture. It took 40 years to do it, but I believe the body politic of the church is convinced that that's a bankrupt understanding of God, where you measure people's self-worth by their net worth, and you tell folks that God is a capitalist, and bigger is better. And the pandemic showed exactly the real value of prosperity gospel. So now the same fake prosperity preachers are now picking up the social gospel. You have Benny Hinn apologizing for the prosperity gospel. Others trying to act like they didn't preach it, and now they're sounding social gospel like, but they have no justice mandate. To merely talk about problems and not present a mandate to the people to alleviate their suffering is to preach confusion. And so I would urge folks, especially preachers who preach prosperity gospel, take your time, take baby steps. Just you, and you might start by repenting and doing the work that Zacchaeus did when he repented, and start investing in the communities, start investing in organizations that are supporting the community. And if you want to start, I'll sanctify every dollar you want to give to the New Georgia Project. I'll pray over it and remove the sin stain of your filthy lucre from how you got it, and turn it into some good. And I'm just teasing. We want everybody out there to give and support. And let me also say this: I'm critical of the church because I love it. As James Baldwin said of America, that he was critical of America because he loved it. He reserved the right to criticize her to make her better. And I'm a church man, been one all my life, and want nothing more to be a statesman for the church. And there are lots of churches everywhere who are doing good work, who are educating their young people, promoting their advancement, who are feeding the hungry and clothing the naked, who are lending themselves in all kinds of ways during the pandemic to doing more than just being a place where we talk about God, but we actually become God's hands and feet in this world. And so shouts out to those who are laboring with little fanfare, no popularity. You ain't on the real preachers of Savannah or Augusta or Atlanta, or certainly not LA. You're doing God's work, and God bless you for it.
Well, I think Dr. Johnson gave us a segue, Reverend Osborne. This is something that I was hoping to talk about, is just for those that are listening, and even with First Tabernacle, I think right out of the gate, a budget, a ministry action plan priority would be to look at how churches can engage and support not only the New Georgia Project. If we don't have people who are in our congregations who are interested and willing to do the work, but are willing to give the money, let's take the money they're giving and get it to the organizations who got the people who are willing to do the work. We may not be able to get people out to do that work, but we need to get the money to the people so they have the resources to do that work. And I'm not going to say that I'm a Francys Johnson or anything close to it, but what I will do is make sure I can say we need to support the New Georgia Project, and I myself need to go and make a contribution to that effort, because we can't talk about it and not be about it. So if we're serious about it, let's go ahead and make the commitment to help them do this work, because we may not be able to do it all, but let's go ahead and get with the folks who are trying to do it and start tying our shoestrings so that when they're trying to run, we done tied their laces together. So now as they run, they tripping because we done tied their shoelaces together. Let's give them the best shoes to run, so that if they're going to run for us, then we need to make sure they're equipped for the run. and I'll play my role. I'll be at the water station. I have the water ice cold, the Gatorade ready to go. I may not be here to run, but I'll be here to get the Gatorade station. So while those who are running, I know my role, right? My role is going to have best Gatorade water station on the race course. But guess what? I know that that's the role. But what we can't have is everybody wanting to be the track coach, right? Because everybody can't be the coach. There's one coach. They already got the plan. Let's get on the team and figure out either we're going to run, we're going to be at the water station, we're going to cheer, we're going to be at the finish line, but let's make sure we play those roles respectively and get out and support those organizations doing the work. He ain't going to ask for the money, but I'm asked for it because I know that it takes money to do anything, and we just get too comfortable saying, I don't want to give no money over there. I don't know what they do with the money. You don't know what the hell McDonald's doing with it either, but you go buy it. So give it to these folks and let them do the work.
Listen, I am thoroughly blessed and encouraged by this conversation tonight. Doc, can you give us the website for the New Georgia Project? What's the website?
newgeorgiaproject.org. newgeorgiaproject.org.
That's New Georgia, all spelled out, not New GA.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I have this question, and I want to ask. I've asked Mr. Representative about Medicaid, and Matt, don't think I've forgotten you. I got one just for you, and I want to make sure that I put a bow on this because I respect your time. But Doc, something's burning on me, and I need to ask you this. What is restorative justice, and how do we see it? How do we see it practiced in our judicial systems?
And are you asking that question of me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So restorative justice is a part of the larger understanding of justice. And our Sunday school lesson on yesterday was rooted in this, if you follow the International Sunday School curriculum. And it is really rooted in a Zulu Bantu expression called Ubuntu. I am because we are. And what restorative justice seeks to do is to recognize the interconnectedness of all of us and repair the harm that is caused by some offense. And it takes into account the victims, the offenders, and the community. And so restorative justice as a theory is what I just suggested. As a practice, looks like when we bring folks together and mediate resolutions as opposed to taking them through probation or some other carceral solution that only further weakens both the victims and the offenders and the community because they have less resources because they're paying them to probation. And so there are ways that we have to imagine a new system. Michelle Alexander did a great work in talking about the new Jim Crow and mass incarceration. As we tear down that system, some of that's being done through the legislature, and I've been a part of that work for the last few years, and that's been great work. We have to imagine what kind of system we want in place, because one that largely warehouses Black and brown people, poor people, the mentally challenged among us is not a justice system. And so restorative justice is a lens by which you look at justice completely different than the ways that we've looked at it before. And I think it's high time for it.
So to Matt, how can we see Doc's talking about restorative justice and reimagining kind of our systems. We know we have, and Dr. Derek, you can chime in also. We know we have so many Black and brown youth who are falling prey at such an early age. And like Doc said, our society is weaker because of the fact that these systems of injustice are disproportionately impacting Black and brown youth of color. How can we reimagine How can we reimagine this so that, I mean, we save our boys and girls?
I think about something that Dr. King said. First of all, I'm enjoying the dialogue between everyone. Dr. King said we're all tied together in a single garment of destiny, wrapped in an inescapable bond of mutuality. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Today's young people, they aren't looking for a way out; they're looking for a way in. They're looking for a way in the movement. We saw the uprising and the uptake of that in 2020 during the George Floyd death and the Breonna Taylor murder. We saw young people organize all over this country and get involved and pour out into the streets in the middle of a global pandemic because they sought to have something and be part of something that was more higher than themselves. But how do we see a continuation of young people like that? I think we have to engage even when there isn't a tragedy, right? Because sometimes I think in America, particularly with young people today, we have a problem with learning when we lose, not learning before we lose. So we have to lose Ahmaud to repeal the Citizen Arrest Act. You know, we have to lose Breonna Taylor to see that there's a problem with policing. We have to see a white man stand on a black man's neck to understand the authority and the power and the advantages that are taken in the criminal justice system. There is no such thing as something doesn't matter. Everything's got to matter. And if we're going to engage young people, we can't make it matter when it hurt. We got to make it matter when it's good. And so part of that is meeting young people where they are. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Snapchat. Unfortunately, you know, some young people, they will never visit the New Georgia Project website. But I tell you one thing, we got to bring the New Georgia Project to Facebook. And we only get about, our attention span as young people, you really only get about a good 20 to 30 seconds. So what turned into Facebook Lives are not turning into Facebook Reels. So you've got to say what you got to say in a matter of 30 seconds and make it count. But after you make it count, put some action behind it, because young people, if not, young people continue to believe that votes don't matter. And that's a problem. So I find myself having conversation with friends of mine and we're talking about voting when voting doesn't matter. Voting can't just matter when your candidate is elected. Voting has to matter all the time because every election is determined by the people that show up. And so if we're going to save the next generation come before us, treat us like that. Treat us like we're the leaders of tomorrow. Don't treat us like we're the suspects of today. Treat us like we're the leaders of tomorrow. Talk to us. You know, I know we young, so let's say it like this. Talk to us nice, right? Talk to us on a way that we can understand. You know, we're not above Michelle Alexander, The New Jim Crow. We read those kind of books. You know, we're not above books that are engaging to us, but you can't talk to us if we're uninformed. So we've got to create forums like this with people that look like me. Even if you don't have much to contribute, you do at some point will have something to control. And so we've got to continue to be a part of things like this right here. So this thing right here is necessary.
I'm going to just say something totally different than what Dr. Johnson has said and what Brother Grady has said so eloquently is I think in order to save our young people, we ain't got to be scared to say something to them. I think when we see kids in the community doing something, everybody's scared to say something to them. We don't want to say nothing to them. When I was growing up at 36 and Waters, I had two ladies at the top of my street, Miss Bratt and Lord Miss Lottie Mae Knight. If they heard me cussing coming down the street doing whatever, I could not run the telephone. They called my grandmama in a minute. By the time I got there, she was ready to see me. And I think we see our young people going in a bad direction, but we're scared to say something to them. We don't want to talk to them. We don't want to tell them because we don't want to offend them. We don't want to hurt their feelings. We don't want them to think anything of us. We just want to mind our business. Well, if we keep minding our business, the business that we're going to be minding will be our business when what they do affects us. And then we want to jump in. Then we want to say it's a crisis. Then we want to say we should do something. No, we had all this stuff. I'm going to be, I've worked for the Boy Scouts for a very long time. I don't have people out leading Boy Scout troops anymore, taking young men camping, teaching them backpacking skills and stuff like that because we're all too busy. We're too busy to take time and invest in kids. We got the next meeting to go to. We got this to go to. And guess what? When you don't invest in them kids, one of my favorite people is Deacon Herbert Deloach. Man, he was my scoutmaster he's been scoutmaster 40 years. Until you start looking at things and that type of investment in projects and kids and people, we don't see the same thing because nobody wants to give up the time, right? That's the resource. Time. You ain't got to have all the money in the world. If you want to change the criminal justice system, start by investing in a few kids and let them know that you give a dang about them. That's all it really takes, is for us to get off of our duffs and do something. Stop posting on Facebook about how we're trying to effectuate all this change. We're trying to change policy. We want to do this and do this. You can do all of that by just working with a group of 12 to 15 young men in your community. But we say, oh, no, we ain't got time for that. It take money. And we got all the excuses of why we can't work with these kids. And guess what? If we don't work with them, somebody else going to work with them. And then guess who else going to end up working with them? The criminal justice system. And when they work with them, it ain't going to be pretty, because they're going to hand out mandatory minimums, right? And then we want to go and cry at the courthouse and say, oh, but he was a good child. He did this. Well, guess what? There ain't nobody to speak to his character, because you didn't invest in that young person at an early age. I'm proud of the people investing in me. And I ain't going to flex like I made every decision right. I ain't did everything the best way, but I promise you, I know it was a few folks who wasn't scared to tell me about my behind. And if we have more folks who would be willing to do that for young people, things will change. But they got to know you're doing it out of a place of love and not out of a posture of I'm just trying to be over you because I'm older. When you do it out of love, people can receive things differently. Not from a position of, oh, I'm in charge, I'm the leader, you're going to do what I say. No, from a position, hey, young brother, let me talk to you real quick. Let me let you know what's going on. If we really want to see this change in juvenile justice and criminal justice, it starts right now with our kids. Taking them, like Dr. Johnson said, to the library, getting them a library card. I remember going to Hitch Village to get a library card and reading books and making that investment. Kids not even know how to go to the library. We want to take them everywhere, but somewhere that's going to benefit them. We want to do all the fun stuff. Fun stuff is good, but sometimes you got to make them do stuff, because how do children know what's good for them? Because they haven't lived a life yet. That's where we as leaders have to step up, and even as parents, as community leaders, say, I know what's best for your future, because you haven't seen what a future could be yet. Only what you see on social media is what you've seen. So until we make something happen, I promise you, we've been in the same space, because everybody said, oh, I don't have no time to work with the kids today. Man, this just takes a lot. We're comfortable because our weekends are loose and we don't have nothing else to really do, but we got to get the yard work done. We got to get this project and we got to get that done. But for the kids, we don't have no time. And for the people that are working with kids, I salute you. But I think what you're doing is great. And I think we could do even more, because I've seen more happen. I just think we're operating in less right now.
Incredible. I would just add this with something that, Derek shared that I just absolutely love. Parents are kids' first champion.
Sure.
If parents aren't being an example in the homes, I grew up in foster care. 15 years old, I went in the foster care system. I got put out of foster care when I was 19 because I'd already aged out of the system. Slept in my car for 2 weeks, put myself through college, and nobody gave me anything. What I'm trying to say in that point is that we've got to get ourselves in a position to win. And if you guys aren't transparent about where you are and what it took to get there, then we don't want to change. What saved me and what made me believe that I could do better is I saw other people do better who lived on the south side, not who lived on the west side. And that's because transparency is the transformation of the transportation for transformation. So we've got to be honest about where we are. We got to be honest about how we got there. And if we want young people to win, we got to know they're there. And so we got to keep it real. And I think in order for us to win, we got to win within, and we got to win from home. But what happens when you don't have a two-parent home? What happens when you are in the foster care system and your foster dad's 86 and your foster mom is 72? What do? Where's the example there when they're doing the best that they can with what they have to work with after being a foster parents for 35 years? Like what else can we give these next generation of young people? We've got to give them the resources. So the system's got to work for everybody. It can't just work for somebody. So there should have been a program in place that would have helped me when I aged out of the system, that would have got me housing. There should have been a program in place that should have got me to believe that I could get a card that could have helped me fill out a college application. I graduated. They told, send me on my way. There you go. You got your diploma. Diploma now won't even get you a job at McDonald's. But, you got to figure it out. And so we've got to give back, and we've got to help young people figure it out. We got to keep it real.
I can't say enough how much I appreciate your time, gentlemen, and certainly the time of everyone who's connected with us tonight. Out of respect for your time, I'm going to try to put a bow on this. So I'm going to draw it down to, I had some more questions, but I really just want to get two out, and we're going to put a bow on this. Okay. So we've talked about a lot, but I want to draw attention to people right here in our town. There are areas of our town where people are being put out on the street with no recourse. There are areas of our town where not only are people being put out on the street, but poor people are really being penalized for being poor. There are, when I look at Dr. Johnson and some of the cases that he's taken up, Um, I mean, our people are victimized by the criminal justice system. Serve and protect who? I mean, so here's my question. I want each of you guys to take a shot at this. I know that people like us have to stand up and say something. We know that. We've got to stand up, and we've got to say something. We've got to use our influence. We've got to use the power that God's given us, what we've been entrusted with, in order to protect those who are on the margins. But my question is, what are we going to do to empower our people so that they aren't on the margins and they are not so precariously placed to become victims of these systems? What do we do to move our people forward from the margins?
I think we let Dr. Johnson go first because he sets things up better for all of us and he gives us things to steal from. So I don't know why he's waiting, but we let him go first because when he gets done, we all get ideas from that. So I don't know why he's like being humble right now, but we're waiting, sir. Thank you so much.
So one of the I would just suggest that that everything we need we already have. There's a great wealth that we can tap into when we engage each other. And this is one of those nights where I'm grateful for friends like Pastor Osborne and you all who have helped to sharpen me. And so, first, understand there's great wealth in our lived experience. And for those who have written about the lived experience, like one of my partners, Mallow Davis, he's written a book called We Need You. And it's literally a guide as a conversation to his sons and to other young people about how we need them to get involved in the movement. And it's real life lessons from his journey. And of course, he's a noted civil rights lawyer, and so to know that there's great wealth that we have, and conversations like this help to tap into that wealth, and we should share it. And then the second thing I would suggest is people are already doing so much, and they need to be affirmed in the courage that they're exercising.
Yes,
Some of it is just ordinary, but it still takes a lot of courage. The folks who are making their way and tending to our institutions like the church in the midst of a pandemic, everybody did stay home. Some folks got out there and kept things going. And it's the one thing that I think I see so little of in our politicians, our political class, and the elites who have so much, is that they're just so damn afraid. Courage is what's missing. And I see it exhibited by people who get up and send their kids to school, and take care of elderly folks and look after their neighbors, and in small ways help to move us forward. So courage. And then I think maybe the last thing I would think we all can do, everybody can do, is take time for the kind of self-care that nobody else in this world is going to give to you. And that includes resting, that includes being able to engage in meditation and prayer, if that's something that is a part of your faith envelope. But you need to take care of yourself, and stop stressing out about all of these things, worry and anxiety. Maximize your right now. So that's what I have to offer, and that doesn't cost you anything. So Walmart ain't selling courage; it comes from on the inside. And the kind of self-care that you can engage in, you don't need to pay anybody to go in the spa. You can go and stick your feet in the dirt right outside. Get you some lavender, pull you some sage, and engage in the kind of self-care that you need to do. Love yourself. I love you all. Thank you for letting me stop in and share a little bit tonight.
thank you so much, Doc.
I'm gonna jump in and let Brother Grady close us out. Let Matt close us out. I think what we can do just right now in this moment and in this space is to figure out what direction we as an individual first want to head, right? Because you can't be supportive of anything if you don't know where you want to go. And I had to do this. I had to figure out what direction I wanted to go in and how was I going to go in this direction and the things that I was going to take on and going in this direction. But then I also understood this. The second thing I would say is understand the role that you can play in anything that you want to do, right? If you're not the organizer, you don't want to be the organizer. If you're not this, I think that's the most important thing is we all have an idea. Everybody I'm seeing now wants to be the leader. And there can only be one chief, but we need a lot of other Indians. Many hands make light work. And I think in today's time, you don't have to be the leader of everything. Everybody has the spirit of wanting to lead. But like Dr. Johnson said, sometimes you got to have the courage to lead. And so while I look at that, I think we have to figure out how and what role we want to play. And that role can't always be the leader of everything or wanting to be in charge of everything, wanting to be seen at everything. Sometimes we have to take a back seat to those who are leading us in that direction and follow the leader. I know being a good leader comes from first being an effective follower. And if you can't follow, I don't know how you'll be able to lead because people won't be able to follow you because you yourself don't know how to follow. So I think that's important. And I echo what Dr. Johnson said about self-care. I think self-care is important, but I also think sometimes you got to cut off social media, get away from all the divisiveness because there are people who seek to divide us each and every day. And the more we do to divide each other and stay at each other's throat, the better off institutions of racism stand because we haven't figured out a way to come to each other, man to man, woman to woman, brother to sister, and address our issues and dialogues. But we tell the young people, talk it out, don't shoot it out. But we shoot at each other on social media. And so that can't be the way for us to move forward because we set the example that it's okay to shoot at each other on social media. Now I'm just shoot at this person in real life. If we truly say that we want to lead our community, we have to stop, have a civil conversation, figure out where we want to be, figure out what role we're going to play, and then figure out how to move forward and bring more people together instead of being divisive and figure out how to unite us for a common cause. And then we can achieve that cause, but also making sure we don't go crazy at that thing.
I would just add my few words, and it's this. We are raising up a generation of young people that will go to Google before they will ask their parents about things that they wonder about. And in doing so, we've got to put those resources online to let young people know that the kind of help they feel like is needed is already out there. So to any young person that's been watching this, anybody that's going to share this with a young person, I would advise this. The future of the next generation is self-education. I can't say this enough. Reading saved my life. Reading gives a perspective about your purpose and your passion. And what you don't know about, you have the resources to get your hands on. And in that way, it shapes who you will become. But it all starts by knowing that you matter, your life serves a purpose. And when we all do it together, we all do better together. So if the water's bad for one of us, then the water's bad for all. And so it is my hope that more young people like never before will self-educate, will read, will engage what this world has to offer. More so, not just about Jesus, because heaven and earth will pass away. But I want every young person to know that you matter and your life starts now. And God's got great involved, and your vote matters. Don't ever forsake the vote. Don't forsake the importance of where you stand in the gap, because those who we look up to now, our church celebrities, they're going to be gone one day. And we've got to lead the way. And we've got to do more than shout and speak in tongues and dance with 2 steps and 3 and 5. We got to really talk about post-traumatic slavery syndrome in America, because young people are still living with it. And if not, we're going to repeat it. And we're going to be slaves all over again. We're going to be slaves to ourselves, slaves to this system, and we're going to be slaves to ignorance. So we've got to read, and we've got to engage, and we've got to get involved.
Got to hit that unmute button, Pastor Osborne.
You want to say something, Reverend Representative?
Oh, no, I just wanted you to hit that unmute button. You know, we've been Zooming for 2 years, and folks forget about that mute button. That mute button.
You forget
he just started smiling out of nowhere. We didn't know why he was smiling. He was just smiling, like just smiling.
You forget to look at it. Listen, I just want to tell each of you thank you, and I hope that you felt like you had the time and space to at least speak some of what was on your heart. This was on my heart for us not to. I know we didn't have a parade today, and all of that, but I could not. My heart was just burdened that our community have some kind of call to action. And I want to say this in closing. In Acts chapter 16, Apostle Paul encountered a girl who was possessed by demons. She was not only possessed by spirits, though, in addition to being possessed by spirits, she was oppressed by a system. There were there were men who made money from the demonic possession that tormented her soul. And the Apostle Paul, out of frustration, becomes a tool of this woman's deliverance. And her deliverance not only sets her free, it actually upsets an unjust system that had oppressed this young woman. And I want you to know that that's the kind of gospel that we represent, a gospel that is not just food for your soul. It is not just a gospel that's going to free your spirit, not just a gospel to lift and to renew your mind, but this is a gospel that breaks physical chains. This is a gospel that upsets unjust systems. Do remember, we just got finished with Christmas. Herod, the unrighteous king, was upset because a rightful ruler was born on planet Earth. And I want you to know that these systems of oppression, they shake when the church, when the people of God, when communities of people that believe God and know that if they do what God's empowered them to do, that God will do what only he can do. Those institutions, they tremble when people realize and recognize the innate power that God has given them. And Dr. Johnson spoke about courage tonight. God has not given us the spirit of fear.
No.
He has given us power, love, and a sound mind. And I pray tonight that we are encouraged to charge forward. We're encouraged to move forward. Doc, I want you to know that, I mean, we've, been tagging. We've been, tagging, coming along, but I'm going to be holding on to your coattail as we move the ball forward. This is important. And for those who, maybe your palate isn't for everything that was presented tonight, but you and I have to learn how to do what other people do, hold their nose and do what they got to do anyway. Come on now. Let's be big boys and girls and get done what must be done to save our communities. We got to get it done.
That's right.
I thank you tonight. Matt. I have so enjoyed the fervor, and I thank God for the passion that you have for younger generations. What you're doing in schools, it's amazing. We applaud you. Keep going. And if there's anything I can do by way of support, I mean, I'm not just speaking over this. We've talked in person. If there's anything I can do to support your effort, you got it. And Reverend Representative, we're praying for you as you move the ball forward. Stay true. Thank you for what you do. We're counting on you. Doc, we're praying for you. And we're standing with you. Thank you all to all of you who were with us tonight. I want to pray for you, and I'm going to let you go. And so, Father, thank you so much for these moments that we've shared tonight. Lord, what we have heard tonight is an interpretation. It is our theology of what your word says. We are trying to live out scripture in our time. We are Nehemiah, standing, looking at the walls of the lives of our people. We're looking at the walls of our communities. We're looking at the walls of our world, looking at the walls of our city. The walls are badly broken down. Lord, our families are in disrepair. Our hospitals are full, and our hospitals are full, and yet there are those who need care tonight who cannot afford the care that they need. There are those behind bars tonight, wrongly incarcerated or facing some kind of injustice. There are those tonight, Lord God, that have heard what we've said, and they know the feeling of being wronged or impacted by the systems that victimize people in this world. But I thank you that there is a God in heaven. And I thank you that the judge of all the earth will do what is right. And so, Lord, we look to you and we thank you. We thank you that even things that work against us, you cause them to work for us. You make all things work together for the good of them who love you and who are called according to your purpose. And so we thank you tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you, folks. Thank you so much for being with us. Remember, you can stream us in any Sunday morning at 11. We would love to remain connected with you, and we're going to keep more conversations like this going. If this was a blessing to you, make sure you share it. Make sure you hit share so that it can bless somebody else. And if it's been a blessing to you, I want you to write me and tell me how this blessed you. My email address is pastor@first, F-I-R-S-T, tabernacle, TABERNACLE, 1898.com. Email me. Tell me how this blessed you. Tell me how this impacted you. So on behalf of myself, on behalf of that beautiful girl I'm married to, Miss Kalena, on behalf of Israel, Eris, Joy, and Shiloh, on behalf of the wonderful people of Tabernacle, we love you. A happy MLK Observance Day. God bless.
A dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today